The 10-year-old boy worked on the streets to support his sick grandmother until a businessman found him and changed his life. The shrill sound of sirens tore through Detroit's night air, echoing through the narrow, dirty streets of the Corktown neighborhood. Mia Lawson, a 17-year-old girl with tired eyes and disheveled hair, clutched the hand of her younger brother, Liam, only 8 years old. Their hearts beat fast as they hid in the shadows of an alleyway, waiting for the police patrol to pass by without noticing them. "Mia, I'm hungry," Liam whispered, his small body trembling against hers. Mia swallowed, feeling the weight of responsibility crush her shoulders. For 3 months now, since they ran away from their last abusive foster home, the city streets had become their makeshift home. Every day was a fight for survival, a constant battle against hunger, cold, and fear. "I know, little one," she murmured, running her fingers through her brother's dirty hair. "We'll try to find something to eat as soon as it's safe to leave here." When the sound of sirens finally faded into the distance, Mia and Liam cautiously emerged from their hiding place. The night was unusually cold for early fall, and Mia could see Liam's breath forming small clouds in the air. She adjusted the tattered jacket around his shoulders, wishing she could offer more comfort. They walked through the almost deserted streets, their eyes attentive to any opportunity to get food. They passed closed restaurants and garbage dumps, their desperation growing with every step. It was then that Mia spotted a man coming out of a bakery, carrying a box that exuded the tantalizing aroma of fresh bread. "Wait here," she whispered to Liam, leaning him against the wall of a building. "Don't move, okay?" With her heart in her throat, Mia approached the man. Her hands were shaking, not just from cold, but from fear and shame at what she was about to do. She had never stolen before, but Liam's hunger was a powerful motivator. Just as she was about to snatch the box from the man's hands, he turned and faced her. Mia froze, expecting screams or even a slap, but what she found were kind eyes and an understanding smile. "You seem to be in trouble, dear," said the man, his voice surprisingly soft. He was tall, with gray hair and a face marked by expression wrinkles. He wore a baker's apron and emanated an air of calm that made Mia hesitate. I, she stammered, unable to form a coherent sentence. The man looked past her, noticing Liam cowering against the wall. His gaze returned to Mia, understanding spreading across his face. "You're hungry, aren't you?" he asked gently. Mia nodded, tears beginning to form in her eyes. The man didn't hesitate. He opened the box and offered her 2 loaves of bread that were still warm. "Take it," he said. "And if you want more, the bakery is just around the corner. My name is Frank Donovan. I'll be there if you need any help." Mia took the bread with trembling hands, hardly believing the unexpected kindness. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking. Frank smiled once more and started to walk away. But then he stopped and turned around. "You know, we always need extra help in the bakery. If you're interested in a job, come by tomorrow morning. We can talk." Before Mia could reply, Frank had already disappeared into the night, leaving her stunned by the unexpected offer. She ran back to Liam, handing him one of the loaves of bread. As she watched her brother devour the food, Mia felt a spark of hope ignite in her chest for the first time in months. That night, sheltered in an abandoned building, Mia couldn't stop thinking about Frank's offer. It was an opportunity, a chance to get off the streets and provide a better life for Liam. But years of disappointment and betrayal made her suspicious. What would be the price of this help? What secrets could Frank be hiding? While Liam slept peacefully beside her, his stomach finally full, Mia stared at the peeling ceiling, lost in thought. The decision she would make the next morning could change everything. Was Frank really the salvation they so desperately needed, or just another disappointment waiting to happen? With these turbulent thoughts, Mia finally gave in to tiredness, falling asleep with her arm protectively around Liam. The dawn would bring new challenges and perhaps a chance at redemption for the Lawson siblings. The sun had barely risen when Mia woke up, her body aching from the hard floor of the abandoned building. Next to her, Liam was still sound asleep, a slight smile on his lips, probably dreaming of the warm bread from the night before. Mia allowed herself a moment to observe her brother, her heart squeezing at the sight of the dirt smudges on his face and his worn-out clothes. Frank's offer echoed in her mind. A job. A chance. But the distrust ingrained by years of disappointment made her hesitate. What if it was a trap? What if they were separated again? "Liam," she called softly, shaking her brother's shoulder. "Wake up, little one. We've got to go." Liam's eyes opened slowly, still clouded by sleep. "Go where, Mia?" She hesitated for a moment. "Remember the man from yesterday? The one who gave us the bread? He offered me a job at the bakery." Liam sat up instantly, his eyes wide with excitement. "Really? Does that mean we'll have more bread?" Mia couldn't help but smile at her brother's enthusiasm. "Maybe, but we can't get carried away yet, okay? Let's just see what happens." They left the abandoned building, the fresh morning air welcoming them with a gentle breeze. The streets of Detroit were beginning to come alive, with the first workers heading to their jobs and shopkeepers opening their stores. Mia held Liam's hand tightly as they walked towards the bakery. Her stomach churned with nervousness, but she tried to keep a calm expression so as not to worry her brother. When they reached the corner Frank had indicated the night before, the aroma of fresh bread enveloped them like a warm hug. The bakery's facade was simple but welcoming, with the name Donovan Bakery painted in cursive letters across the window. Mia stopped in front of the door, her heart pounding in her chest. Liam squeezed her hand, looking at her expectantly. "It's all right, Mia," he said, his boyish voice laden with a wisdom beyond his years. "We can trust him. I feel it." Taking a deep breath, Mia pushed open the door. The bell above tinkled softly, announcing their arrival. The interior of the bakery was cozy, with shelves full of breads, cakes, and cookies. The smell was even more intense in there, making Mia's stomach growl involuntarily. Frank emerged from behind the counter, his face lighting up as he recognized them. "You've come. Good to see you, kids." Mia tensed, instinctively pulling Liam closer. We came because of the job offer," she said, her voice trembling slightly. Frank nodded, his gentle smile never faltering. Of course. But first, how about some breakfast? You look hungry." Before Mia could protest, Frank was already placing a variety of breads and cakes on a tray. He guided them to a small table at the back of the store, away from the prying eyes of the customers who were starting to arrive. As they ate, Frank began to talk about the bakery, his voice calm and reassuring. He talked about how he had inherited the business from his father, about the family recipes passed down through generations, and about his passion for feeding the community. Liam listened fascinated, his eyes shining with admiration. Mia, on the other hand, remained cautious, analyzing Frank's every word and gesture for signs of danger. "So," Frank finally said, turning his attention to Mia, "about the job, I need help serving customers, organizing the shelves, and if you're interested, I can even teach you how to make some of the simpler products." Mia blinked, surprised by the generous offer. I've never worked in a bakery before," she admitted. Frank laughed softly. "No one is born knowing, dear. I'm willing to teach you, if you're willing to learn." It was then that Mia noticed something in Frank's gaze. It wasn't pity, as she was used to seeing in the eyes of adults. It was understanding, as if he could see through the layers of dirt and mistrust, straight to the frightened girl desperate for a chance. "What about Liam?" she asked, her biggest worry finally coming to the surface. "I can't leave him alone." Frank looked at the boy, who was now licking his fingers covered in icing sugar. "Well, I think we can find a little place for him here too. Maybe he can help me organize the ingredients or decorate some cookies. What do you think, young man?" Liam's eyes lit up like stars. "Can I help? Really?" Mia felt tears forming in her eyes. It was more than she had ever dared to hope for. A job, a safe place for Liam, the possibility of a better future. "Why are you doing this?" she asked Frank, her voice breaking. "You don't even know us." Frank was silent for a moment, his gaze becoming distant. "Let's just say, I've been in your shoes once, and someone reached out to me when I needed it most." He smiled, coming back to the present. Sometimes, all you need is a chance. At that moment, Mia felt something inside her crumble. The walls she had built over the years to protect herself and Liam began to crumble. She looked at her brother, saw the hope in his eyes, and knew she couldn't deny him this opportunity. "When can I start?" she asked, her voice firm for the first time in a long time. Frank's smile widened. "How about right now?" As Frank showed Mia the basics of how the bakery worked and Liam had fun decorating cookies with colored icing, a feeling of warmth and security began to envelop the Lawson siblings. It was as if the sweet aroma of the bakery was dispelling the bitter smell of their past experiences. However, as Mia tied the apron around her waist, she couldn't help but notice a strange look that Frank cast at a framed photo on the wall. It was a picture of a smiling woman, with kind eyes that resembled Frank's own. There was something in that photo, some unspoken secret, that made Mia wonder if there was more to Frank's story than he was telling. But for the moment, she pushed those worries aside. For the first time in months, Mia and Liam had a roof over their heads, food in their stomachs, and the promise of a better tomorrow. And that, for now, was more than enough. The weeks passed like a whirlwind of flour and sugar in the Donovan bakery. Mia was surprised at how quickly she adapted to the new routine. Her hands, once calloused by life on the streets, were now adept at shaping dough and decorating cakes. The smell of cinnamon and vanilla had become as familiar as the air she breathed. Liam, meanwhile, was blossoming. The shy, frightened boy had turned into a happy, curious child. He had become the bakery's unofficial mascot, charming customers with his sweet smile and his invented stories about the magical origins of the cookies he helped decorate. One quiet October afternoon, while Mia was cleaning the counter after the lunch rush, she noticed Frank looking again at the picture of the smiling woman on the wall. There was a sadness in his eyes that she had never seen before. "Who is she?" Mia dared to ask, breaking the silence. Frank seemed to wake up from a reverie. "Oh, that's Margaret, my wife," he replied, a wistful smile playing on his lips. Mia hesitated, feeling that she was treading on delicate ground. She doesn't work here anymore." Frank's sigh was almost imperceptible. "No, dear, Margaret. She left us 5 years ago. Cancer." Mia's heart squeezed. "I'm so sorry, Frank. I didn't know." Frank shook his head, his smile becoming a little more genuine. "Don't worry. Margaret always said that life is like baking bread. Sometimes the dough doesn't rise as we expect, but we can still make something delicious out of it." Before Mia could reply, the doorbell jingled, announcing the arrival of a customer. She was an elegant woman with perfectly groomed gray hair and an expensive coat. Her eyes scanned the bakery with a barely concealed air of disdain. "Can I help you, ma'am?" Mia asked, putting on her best smile. The woman ignored her completely, addressing Frank directly. "Mr. Donovan, I presume?" Frank nodded, his expression changing subtly. "Yes, it's me. What can I do for you?" "I'm Evelyn Blackwood, from Social Services," she introduced herself, her voice as cold as ice. "We've received an anonymous tip-off about 2 illegal children working in this establishment." Mia felt the blood freeze in her veins. She looked at Frank, who seemed equally shocked. "There must be some mistake," Frank began, but Evelyn interrupted him. "There's no mistake, Mr. Donovan. We have information that you are harboring and employing minors without documentation or legal authorization." Her eyes fixed on Mia. "I assume you're one of them." Mia opened her mouth to reply, but no sound came out. The fear she had kept under control for the last few weeks returned in full force, threatening to engulf her. Frank stepped forward, placing himself between Mia and Evelyn. "Mrs. Blackwood, I can assure you that there is nothing irregular going on here. These children are—" "Your relatives?" Evelyn added, arching an eyebrow. "Because, according to our records, you have no children or nephews." The silence that followed was deafening. Mia could hear her own heart beating frantically. She looked around desperately for Liam. He was at the back of the bakery, oblivious to the drama unfolding. "Look," Frank finally said, his voice low and urgent. "Can we talk about this in private? There's no need to frighten the children." Evelyn seemed to consider for a moment before nodding rigidly. Very well. But that doesn't change the fact that there are serious irregularities here, Mr. Donovan, and I intend to investigate them thoroughly. As Frank led Evelyn to his office at the back of the bakery, Mia remained paralyzed, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts. All her hopes, all the dreams she had timidly begun to cultivate, seemed to be crumbling before her eyes. Liam appeared at her side, pulling on his apron. "Mia, who's that lady? Why does she look angry?" Mia knelt down, hugging her brother tightly. "It's nothing, little one. Just a difficult customer." But as she held Liam, Mia couldn't help wondering what would happen next. Would they be separated again, sent back to the system that had hurt them so much? And Frank, what would happen to him for trying to help them? In the office, Evelyn's voice rose through the thin walls. "You can't just take children off the street and pretend you're a family, Mr. Donovan. There are laws, procedures." Frank's reply was muffled, but his tone was urgent, almost pleading. Mia closed her eyes tightly, wishing it was all just a bad dream. But the smell of fresh bread, the warmth of Liam's embrace, the roughness of the apron against her skin, it was all too real. When the office door opened again, Mia stood up, putting Liam behind her protectively. Frank left first, his face pale and tense. Evelyn followed, her expression unreadable. "Mia," Frank called softly, "can you come here for a moment? Alone." With her heart in her throat, Mia nodded. She knelt down again in front of Liam. "Stay here, okay? Don't leave the counter. I'll be right back." As she walked towards the office, Mia felt the weight of Frank and Evelyn's gazes on her. The future, which had seemed so promising just a few minutes ago, was now a great unknown. The door closed behind her with a soft click, and Mia found herself facing a decision that could change everything. Whatever happened in that small room in the next few minutes would determine not only her fate, but also Liam's and possibly Frank's. With her hands trembling slightly, Mia sat down, staring at the adults in front of her. The comforting aroma of cinnamon and sugar that permeated the bakery now seemed distant and unreal. At that moment, all Mia could taste was the bitterness of fear and uncertainty. Frank's office seemed smaller than ever, the walls closing in around Mia as she sat rigidly in the worn wooden chair. The air was heavy with tension, and the ticking of the clock on the wall sounded like a countdown to an uncertain fate. Evelyn Blackwood sat opposite Mia, her notepad open and pen in hand. Frank stood, leaning against the wall, his face a mask of worry. "Mia," Evelyn began, her voice softer than before but still maintaining a professional tone, "I need you to tell me the truth about your situation. How did you and your brother end up here?" Mia swallowed, her eyes moving quickly between Evelyn and Frank. She could feel the weight of the lie on the tip of her tongue, the urgency to invent a story that would keep them safe. But something in Frank's gaze made her hesitate. We ran away," she finally admitted, her voice almost a whisper. "From the last foster home. They weren't good people." Evelyn frowned, making quick notes. "And how long were you on the streets before you met Mr. Donovan?" 3 months, Mia replied, the memories of those difficult days making her throat close up. It was hard, but then Frank helped us. He gave us food, a place to stay, a job." "Mia," Frank interrupted gently, "it's all right. You can tell her about everything." Mia looked at Frank, confused. There was something in his eyes, a mixture of sadness and determination that she didn't fully understand. Evelyn arched an eyebrow. "Is there anything else I should know, Mr. Donovan?" Frank took a deep breath, running his hand through his gray hair. "Yes, there is. And I think it's time we all knew the truth." He walked over to the shelf behind his desk and picked up a picture frame that Mia had never noticed before. The picture showed a young woman smiling, holding a baby in her arms. "This," Frank said, his voice breaking, "is my daughter, Caroline, and this is your son, Noah." Mia felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. The resemblance between the woman in the photo and herself was undeniable. "I don't understand," she muttered, looking from Frank to the photo and back to Frank. Frank sat down heavily in his chair, the weight of years of secrets visible on his shoulders. "Caroline, she was like you, Mia, a gentle soul, but bruised by life. She got pregnant young. The child's father abandoned her. I tried to help her, but—" He paused, fighting back tears. "She had her demons, drugs. When Noah was born, she was in no condition to look after him." Evelyn watched the scene with a mixture of shock and understanding dawning on her face. "What happened to them?" Mia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Frank closed his eyes for a moment, as if gathering his strength. "Caroline. She disappeared shortly after giving Noah up for adoption. I spent years looking for her, trying to find my grandson. When I saw you and Liam that night, Mia, you're the image of Caroline. I thought, I hoped." The realization hit Mia like a bolt of lightning. "Did you think I could be—" Frank nodded slowly. "I knew it was unlikely, but the resemblance, the age, I had to help. I had to be sure." Evelyn snorted, breaking the moment. "Mr. Donovan, I understand your motives, but what you did was illegal, I know," Frank interrupted her. "But I couldn't just ignore them, not after having failed my own daughter." Mia felt tears running down her cheeks, all Frank's kindness, all his care. It wasn't just altruism, it was the hope of a grandfather seeking redemption. "What happens now?" Mia asked, her voice trembling. Evelyn sighed, closing her notebook. "Well, the situation is complicated. Technically, Mr. Donovan committed several offenses by harboring undocumented minors and allowing them to work without authorization." Panic began to build in Mia's chest. "Please don't separate us. Don't send Liam back into the system. I'll do anything. Calm down, Mia," Frank said softly, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Nobody's going anywhere. Not if I can help it." Evelyn watched them for a long moment, her face a mask of professionalism, but Mia could have sworn she saw a glimmer of compassion in her eyes. "Look," Evelyn finally said, "this is an unprecedented situation. Normally, I would have to report this immediately and remove the children from Mr. Donovan's custody." She paused, looking directly at Mia. "But it's also my duty to ensure the best interests of the children. And it's clear that, for the first time in a long time, you and your brother are in a stable and loving environment." Mia barely dared to breathe, fearful of shattering the fragile moment of hope. "I propose the following," Evelyn continued. "Mr. Donovan, you have 1 week to start the legal custody process for Mia and Liam. During this time, I will make daily visits to monitor the situation. If everything goes well and you follow all the legal procedures, we can avoid more drastic measures." Frank nodded vigorously. "Yes, of course. I'll do whatever is necessary." Mia looked between the two adults, hardly believing what she was hearing. "So, can we stay?" Evelyn gave a small smile, the first Mia had ever seen on her face. "For now, yes. But there's a lot of work to be done, and a lot of questions to be answered." As they left the office, Liam ran up to Mia, his eyes large and worried. "Is everything all right, Mia? Can we stay?" Mia knelt down, hugging her brother tightly. "Yes, little one. We can stay. For now." While holding Liam, Mia looked at Frank, who was watching the scene with watery eyes. There was so much to be said, so many questions to be asked. About Caroline, about Noah, about the past that connected them in ways she could never have imagined. But in that moment, with the smell of fresh bread in the air and the warmth of Liam's embrace, Mia allowed herself to feel something she hadn't felt for a long time. Hope. The future was still uncertain, full of challenges and possible obstacles. But for the first time in years, she wasn't facing that future alone. The doorbell jingled, announcing the arrival of a customer. Life at Donovan's Bakery continued, now with new revelations, new bonds, and the promise of a new beginning. The days following Frank's revelations were a roller coaster of emotions for Mia. The routine of the bakery continued, but now every moment was permeated by a new understanding, a new perspective on the man who had taken them in. One quiet afternoon, while Liam was busy decorating cupcakes with colorful frosting, Mia found Frank sitting in his office, looking thoughtfully at Caroline's photo. "May I come in?" Mia asked softly, knocking on the ajar door. Frank looked up, a tired smile forming on his face. "Of course, darling. Come in." Mia sat down in the chair opposite the table, her fingers playing nervously with the hem of her apron. "Frank, I wanted to ask you about her. About Caroline." Frank nodded slowly, as if he'd been waiting for this moment. "What do you want to know?" "Everything," Mia answered, her voice barely above a whisper. "What was she like? What happened to her?" Frank took a deep breath, his eyes getting lost in memories. Caroline was brilliant, full of life, of dreams, but she was also fragile, in a way that took me a long time to realize. He paused, choosing his words carefully. "She was always sensitive, you know? She felt things deeply. When her mother died, when she was only 15, it was as if a part of her had died too." Mia listened intently, feeling an inexplicable connection with this woman she had never met. "It was shortly after that she started getting involved with the wrong people," Frank continued. "Drugs, parties. I tried to intervene, but she drifted further and further away. When she found out she was pregnant, at 18, I thought it might be her chance to straighten herself out. But it wasn't," Mia concluded softly. Frank shook his head. "No. The child's father disappeared as soon as he found out. Caroline she really tried to stay clean during her pregnancy. But after Noah was born, it was as if the whole weight of the world had fallen on her. And she decided to give the baby up for adoption," Mia added. "Yes. It was the hardest decision she ever made, but I believe it was the most selfless too. She knew she couldn't take care of him, not in the state he was in." Frank wiped away a stubborn tear running down his cheek. "I tried to convince her to let me stay with Noah, but she said she needed a fresh start, away from everything and everyone that reminded her of her mistakes." Mia felt her heart squeeze. "And you never saw her again?" Frank shook his head. "No. She disappeared soon after. I looked for her for years, hired detectives, but nothing. It's as if she just vanished into thin air." Silence fell over them, heavy with the weight of the revelations. Mia looked at Caroline's photo, feeling a mixture of sadness and a strange sense of connection. "Frank," she said at last, her voice trembling slightly, "I know you hoped I might be—" "Oh, Mia," Frank interrupted gently, reaching out to take her hand. "I know you're not Noah. The DNA tests Evelyn did made that clear, but that doesn't change anything about how I feel about you and Liam." Mia felt tears forming in her eyes. "But now that you know we're not your grandchildren—" "Your family," Frank said firmly. "Family isn't just blood, Mia. It's choice, it's love, and I'll choose you, if you choose me too." Just then, the office door opened and Liam rushed in, his apron covered in flour and icing. "Mia, Frank, come and see. I've made a cupcake that looks like Sonic." The tension of the moment dissipated with Frank and Mia's laughter. Frank stood up, picking Liam up with an ease that belied his age. "Let's see that masterpiece then, my young artist." As they left the office, Mia felt a wave of gratitude and affection wash over her. Perhaps they weren't connected by blood, but the bonds that were forming were just as strong. However, the happiness of the moment was briefly interrupted when Mia noticed Evelyn Blackwood entering the bakery, her face serious and a thick briefcase under her arm. "Mr. Donovan," Evelyn called out, her tone professional but not without kindness. "We need to talk. There are complications in the guardianship process." Frank's smile faltered for a moment, but he quickly restored it for Liam's sake. "Of course, Mrs. Blackwood. Mia, can you look after the store for a moment?" Mia nodded, taking Liam from Frank's arms. As she watched Frank and Evelyn make their way to the office, she couldn't help but feel a twinge of apprehension. What could these complications be? Was her brief moment of happiness about to be interrupted? "Mia, Liam's voice brought her back to the present. Is everything all right? She forced a smile, hugging her brother tightly. It's going to be okay, little one. Come on, show me that Sonic cupcake. As she made her way to the counter with Liam, Mia took one last look at the closed office door. Whatever challenge awaited them, she was determined to face it. For the first time in her life, she had something worth fighting for: a family. The scent of cinnamon and vanilla filled the air, mingling with the smell of possibilities and hope. Mia took a deep breath, letting the familiar comfort of the bakery envelop her. Whatever the future held, she knew she was no longer alone. The clock on the bakery wall seemed to move with agonizing slowness as Mia waited for Frank and Evelyn to return. Every clang of the doorbell made her jump, expecting to see the two of them leaving the office with news that could change everything. Liam, oblivious to the tension in the air, continued decorating cupcakes, his tongue clenched between his teeth in concentration as he created little blue hedgehogs out of frosting. Look, Mia, I've made a whole family of Sonics. Mia forced a smile, stroking her brother's hair. They're beautiful, little one. You're getting very good at it. Just then, the office door opened. Frank came out first, his face pale and tense. Evelyn followed, her expression professional, but with a touch of sympathy in her eyes. Mia, Frank called softly, can you come here for a moment? Liam, why don't you get on with decorating those cupcakes? I'm sure the customers will love them. With her heart in her throat, Mia followed Frank and Evelyn back to the office. As soon as the door closed behind them, she could no longer contain her anxiety. What's going on? What are the complications? Evelyn sniffled, adjusting her glasses. Mia, during our investigation into your and Liam's history, we discovered something unexpected. Frank sat down heavily in his chair, looking suddenly much older. Mia, darling, it seems that, well, you have a living relative. The world seemed to spin around Mia. What? But how? Who? Evelyn opened the folder she was carrying, taking out a document. Your maternal grandmother, Eleanor Reeves. She's been looking for you and Liam for years. Mia staggered, leaning on the table for balance. That's impossible. We were told we had no one else, that we were orphans. Unfortunately, mistakes happen in the system, Evelyn explained, her voice laden with regret. Eleanor was living abroad when her parents died. There was a mix-up with the paperwork, and she was wrongly declared as deceased too. Frank reached out and gently took Mia's hand. She came back to the States a few years ago and has been looking for you ever since. Mia felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. A grandmother, a blood family she had never known existed. Where is she now? In Chicago, Evelyn replied, and she wants to meet you. In fact, she wants custody of both of you. The silence that followed was deafening. Mia looked at Frank, seeing the pain and fear in his eyes. He had become her family, her safe haven, and now... I don't want to go, Mia finally said, her voice trembling. Frank is our family now. Liam is happy here. I'm happy here. Evelyn sighed. I understand your feelings, Mia, but legally, Eleanor has priority as a blood relative, and she has the resources to take care of you. Resources? Mia repeated, feeling a pang of anger. What does it matter? Money isn't family. Frank gave us a home, love, stability. Doesn't that count for anything? Frank stood up, putting his hands on Mia's shoulders. It does, darling. It counts for a lot, and we're going to fight for it, I promise. Evelyn watched them for a moment before speaking again. There is an option. We could arrange a supervised visit. Eleanor would come here, meet you, see the situation. Maybe we can come to an agreement that's best for everyone. Mia felt a mixture of fear and hope. A chance to meet her grandmother, but also a chance to show her how happy they were there. When? She asked. She could be here in 2 days, Evelyn replied. If you agree. Mia looked at Frank for guidance. He nodded slightly, his eyes saying what his voice couldn't. I'm with you no matter what. All right, Mia finally said. Let's go and meet her. As they left the office, Liam ran up to them, his eyes shining with excitement. "Mia, Frank, I've made a special cupcake for you." He held out a cupcake decorated with 3 icing figures, a tall one, a medium one, and a small one, a family. Mia felt tears burn her eyes as she took the cupcake. "It's beautiful, Liam. Thank you." Frank knelt down next to Liam, his voice soft. "Liam, we have something important to tell you about our family." As Frank gently explained the situation to Liam, Mia watched, her heart torn between the joy of having found a missing link to her family and the fear of losing the family she had found in the bakery. The doorbell tinkled, announcing the arrival of a customer. Life went on, relentlessly, while Mia and Liam's fate hung by a thread. In 2 days, everything could change. Mia took a deep breath, smelling the familiar scent of cinnamon and vanilla. No matter what happened, she promised herself, she would fight with all her might to keep this family together. The storm was approaching, but she was determined to face it head-on. The morning of the meeting with Eleanor Reeves arrived with a mixture of nervousness and anticipation that hung over the Donovan bakery like a dense cloud. Mia woke up before sunrise, her thoughts a whirlwind of possibilities and fears. Next to her, Liam slept peacefully, oblivious to the emotional storm that was approaching. Frank was already in the kitchen when Mia came downstairs, the aroma of freshly baked bread and cakes filling the air. He looked at her with a tired but reassuring smile. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked softly. Mia shook her head, reaching for an apron. "Can I help?" Together, they worked in silence, preparing the bakery for the day. Each movement was familiar, comforting, like a well-rehearsed dance. Mia wondered, with a squeeze in her heart, if this would be the last time they would do this together. As the morning progressed, her anxiety grew. Liam, sensing the tension in the air, was unusually quiet, his large, worried eyes following Mia and Frank around the store. Just before noon, the doorbell tinkled. Mia turned around, her heart leaping into her throat. An elegant woman entered the bakery. Her gray hair was perfectly groomed, and her clothes screamed sophistication. But it was her eyes that captured Mia's attention. Eyes identical to her own, full of excitement and anticipation. "Mia? Liam?" Eleanor's voice trembled slightly. Mia felt Liam hide behind her, his small hands clutching her apron. She stepped forward, trying to keep her voice steady. "Mrs. Reeves!" "Oh, my dears," Eleanor breathed, her eyes filling with tears. "Finally," Frank stepped forward, his presence solid and comforting at Mia's side. "Mrs. Reeves, welcome to Donovan Bakery. I'm Frank. Why don't we all go into the office where we can talk more comfortably?" The next few minutes were a surreal mix of introductions, restrained tears, and shared stories. Eleanor talked about how she had searched tirelessly for them, about the bureaucratic error that had declared her dead, about the pain of losing her daughter, Mia's mother, and the agony of not knowing what had happened to her grandchildren. Mia and Liam, meanwhile, shared fragments of their journey. The foster homes, the difficulties on the streets, and finally, the refuge they had found with Frank. "I didn't know," Eleanor said, her voice breaking. "If I had known, I would have moved heaven and earth to find them sooner, to spare them all this suffering." Mia felt a lump in her throat. We're fine now. Frank's been looking after us." Eleanor looked at Frank, a mixture of gratitude and something else in her eyes, perhaps a touch of envy at the connection he clearly had with the children. "I'm very grateful to you, Mr. Donovan," she said, "for looking after them when I couldn't. But now," she turned to Mia and Liam, "now I'm here. I can offer you a home, an education, stability, everything you deserve." Mia felt panic rise in her chest. She looked at Frank, seeing the pain in his eyes, even though he tried to hide it. It was Liam who broke the tense silence. "But what about the bakery? What about Frank? He's our family now." Eleanor looked surprised, glancing between the children and Frank. I understand that you've become attached, but it's not just attachment," Mia interrupted, finding her voice. "Frank saved us, not just from the streets, but from losing hope. He gave us a home, a purpose. He's family. Frank put a gentle hand on Mia's shoulder. Mia, Liam, you don't have to choose. Your grandmother can offer you things I can't. A better life. A better life. But what if we don't want a different life? Mia asked, tears streaming down her cheeks. What if we want to stay here, with you? The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken emotions and impossible choices. It was Eleanor who broke it, her voice soft but firm. Maybe we're going about this the wrong way, she said, looking thoughtfully at Frank. Mr. Donovan, it's clear that you care deeply about my grandchildren, and they clearly love you. I don't want to be the person who separates them from yet another family. Frank blinked, surprised. What are you suggesting, Mrs. Reeves? Eleanor took a deep breath. What if, instead of fighting for custody, we worked together? I could move to Detroit, help out financially, be part of their lives, but they could continue to live here, with you. Mia felt a wave of hope wash over her. Would you do that? Eleanor smiled, tears shining in her eyes. My dear, I've waited years to find you. If it means sharing you with someone who clearly loves you as much as I do, then it's a small price to pay. Frank looked stunned. Mrs. Reeves, I don't know what to say. Say yes, Liam begged, his eyes shining with hope. Please, Frank, we can be a big family. Frank looked at Mia, seeking her approval. She nodded, a smile trembling on her lips. Well, Frank finally said, I think the Donovan Bakery has just gained another member of the family. The next few hours passed in a blur of planning, laughter and, yes, a few more tears. Eleanor shared stories about Mia's mother, filling in gaps the children didn't even know they had. Frank and Eleanor discussed logistics, with Evelyn offering legal guidance on how to formalize the arrangement. As night fell and the bakery closed its doors, a sense of peace and possibility hung in the air. Mia watched Liam proudly showing Eleanor how to decorate cupcakes, Frank laughing and offering tips. Is everything all right? Frank asked softly, approaching Mia. She smiled, feeling a wave of gratitude wash over her. Better than fine. It's perfect. Frank hugged her, and Mia allowed herself to relax completely for the first time in years. The future was still uncertain, with many details to be sorted out. But one thing was clear. She and Liam were no longer alone. They had not just one, but two families who loved them. As the scent of cinnamon and vanilla filled the air, mingling with the sound of laughter and animated conversation, Mia knew that they had finally found their place in the world. The Donovan Bakery wasn't just a business. It was the heart of a newly formed family, a symbol of second chances and new beginnings. And for Mia and Liam, it was the home they had always dreamed of, but never dared to hope for. A home full of love, acceptance, and the sweet scent of endless possibilities.
Did this narrative stir your emotions? Don't forget to express your approval with a like. Take advantage of the Super Thanks feature, available just below the video, to offer direct support to the channel and contribute to the production of more fascinating content. Subscribe and remember to activate the bell to stay up to date with all the latest updates. And attention, a new exciting story is already ready to be displayed on your screen. Your participation means a lot to me, and I hope to count on your presence soon. Thank you very much for dedicating your time to this video.